Okay, client programs. We've been looking at the very basic one, which is the command prompt. This guy down here. There are some other ones that are pretty good. There's the query browser, and the GUI, graphical user interface, for doing a lot of this stuff. The reason I don't generally include it or teach it is because if you want to take the certification exam, you can't do that. It's probably a bad idea to start using it if you intend to go and take an exam. There's a couple of others, the MySQL import, the MySQL dump, which will import data from a file. Can people hear? Is anyone able to hear me? You can. Okay, good. Sorry about that. Okay, good. So what I was saying is that there's a couple of different client programs. The one we've been using so far is the command prompt. There is a query browser, which is a GUI tool that allow you to do all this stuff as well, and it's easier, but it's not covered on the certification exam, and you can't use it on the certification exam. So I think it's best not to use it, especially if you plan to get certified. Not a good idea. Um, and then there's also some other tools for utility functions like importing and exporting data, which we'll get to, which will explain how you can have a big query and export the data out to a file. Some of the non-client utilities, they don't require connecting to the server yet. These are all tools that are used mostly by DBAs and not that important for you to learn unless you want to be a DBA. They're both mostly checking the file system on which the data is stored. MySQL will run on a variety of Linux, just to name a few. The communications is generally the same where they operate. MySQL programs can be invoked from a command line on one computer, like Windows, or from a Unix shell prompt. And the actual server, MySQL server, can be on another server somewhere else. There are a couple of different variations on it, depending upon how you're using it. If you want to know what version you're on, you could do something from here. Actually, I think you can also say select how to add version. That's cool. Yeah. So from MySQL, you can do that. We're on 5.5, which is one of the newer versions. You can also do it from here, and I think it's MySQL-version. Didn't like that one. Dash version. Did I get that wrong? MySQL dash version. Sorry. Which will give you the version number as well. You can get help information as well. Connecting to a server using a client. So if I wanted to go to a database on a computer other than what I'm using right now, which is localhost, then I would have to specify that server name after -h for host, and the username, whatever that is, and -p would be the password, which I'd be prompted for. And then you can log into a MySQL database on another computer. You're not going to have to worry about that too much, but I do it all the time. And there's different information as well. The protocol for connection is mostly usually TCP/IP, and sockets is another way of doing it, although most people just use TCP/IP. Okay, so many different protocols. TCP is for Windows and Unix. It's the most general protocol. It pretty much works on everything, and it's mostly what people use. Unix socket, a socket to connect as well in the Unix world. There's also pipe, which is an early Windows way of doing a lot of these things, and also a shared memory connection. But really the one that everyone uses is TCP/IP because that's the most generic and works on every operating system. Unix, Linux, Mac, and Windows. It works on all of them. The host can be what we call an IP address or a domain name. I have my own MySQL database running on Timlin.net, so I can connect doing that as well. The whole world on Unix, Mac, and Linux, they're basically all variations of Unix. You can use sockets as well, but most people really just use MySQL or use TCP/IP. You can have option files as well for your clients. I don't generally bother with them. The GUI tools are a lot easier to set up. You can set them up the same way you would anything else. Go to the menu that says option and set the stuff up. And you can actually tell it what option file to use at the command prompt if you want. And these are just things for the default database to use, and memory sizes, and default directories, and things like that. You have different You can also set different character modes, which can be important as to whether or not you're going to be using a Latin character set or something different. How quotes are handled in general. Single quotes generally are used. Whether something must be single quoted or not. So quotes are kind of important because they generally delimit strings, and how they're handled exactly can be set as an option as well. You can find out what your SQL mode is by just issuing that. Should I get that one? SQL underscore mode. I think it's probably supposed to be lowercase. Oops. I'm not sure if case really matters, but I seem to like that. Should give us some information. The client program. Can you hear me now? Am I kind of cutting in and out? How about now? Okay. Okay, so you can run MySQL client interactive mode, or you can put stuff in a file and execute it from the file, and MySQL will run that from there. For example, I can come out here and say select star from customers, save that, then I can go back into MySQL, and what it does is it actually goes out to that file and executes the commands in there. Sorry about that, everyone. Usually the voice works really well on this computer. I don't know what's going on. Is there any questions so far? Maybe something you didn't hear well? So there are a couple of variations on using it. You can also, from your shell, do something like that as well. So I can say MySQL test and do what we call redirection from a file, and that will work as well. And it executes the query and goes back out to the command prompt. There are also options to telling it to essentially execute the entire file even if there's errors. Normally, if you execute without this -force or -f option, it will quit on the first error. But with it, it will skip that stuff that errored out and continue on. So again, there's different ways of accessing it. One is if you use the -h, -u, -p options, you can access it on another computer. Most of the, and that's fine. For this class, you're not going to need to worry about that. But sometimes, in real world, you will. There's also a command called show databases, which will show you the databases I have here. And I guess I do not have the world database. That's interesting. Thought I did. Access permission denied. So in this case, I have to log in as the root user. Oh, it exists. It does exist. I just couldn't see it. Okay. Use database name would actually use that database, because you can have multiple databases on your server, and that command determines which one you're currently actively using. And there's different commands here for canceling and quitting. You can type /Q or quit or exit at the command prompt, and it will cancel it. There are also commands for terminating a command and with various different outputs. The semicolon is the default way of doing it, but the \G will display the results in a vertical style. So if I did something like and I did /G, you can see how the data comes out in a vertical style. Alright, so you can see it's coming out vertical instead of horizontal, which is nice for making stuff look a little bit better when you're printing it out for a report. A couple of different prompts. The normal prompt is the MySQL prompt, and the next most common one is the next line. The next couple after this generally indicate that you've made a mistake more than anything else. A single quote means you typed a single quote and you didn't close it off. That's usually a typo. You accidentally hit enter before you were done. Same thing with double quote. The backtick essentially means the same thing. And you can have them, and that's because those can be used as string delimiters, and it'll allow you to go into multiple lines, but normally it indicates more of a mistake than continuing to type something. The / basically means that you started a comment on one line and you didn't end it at the end. So does everyone know how the comments work, multi-line comments? /*//. You have a variety of output formats as well. You can put it into batch formats. It'll put it into a file, a tabular format, which is generally default. You can also output it to in an HTML format or an XML format as well by doing it that way. I generally prefer to just put it into a CSV format and open it up in Excel. You realize you made an error if you're in the middle of a statement and you want to just quit it? Maybe it's not that. But it was. Well, one thing you can do, I know Control-C works. That will break it and you don't finish it. But there actually was another way of doing it. I don't remember now. Oh, okay, it's probably \C. \C. Oh, you mean if it's on the prior line? You'd have to do the \C and kind of use the arrows to go back up to it. Oops, sorry. To go back up to it and fix it. I don't know if there's another way of fixing that or not. Variety of, we've already seen we can do the select, insert, update, and delete commands. You can ask for help as well, just by typing help. You've got commands for doing things and output it in various formats using either upper or lowercase letters. Sometimes they have a different meaning. And SQL commands that can be entered over multiple lines, but MySQL statements cannot. So source file name has to be on the same line. Safe updates option helps to prevent from inadvertently issuing statements that modify too many words. Right, so what this will do is if you've got that on and you issue a delete or an update statement without a where clause or a limit clause, it will warn you. Are you sure you want to do that? Well, SQL is the SQL language. So in SQL, I can put commands on multiple lines. And that works just, to use the database. No problem. But I can't say source. That gives me an error. Source is a MySQL command for just using the MySQL tool. But select star is just a standard SQL command. We've also got an automatic limit of 1,000 rows in output. If you need more than that, there's a limit command to increase that, although you generally wouldn't want to do more than 1,000 at a time anyway. Alright, I think we already looked at this download. I think this particular download is really outdated. The one I gave you last week makes more sense, so I wouldn't even bother with this one. Questions? Any questions so far? Okay. Let me take a quick look at something. They should already be active. Are you talking about for... Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Sorry about that. These all need to be updated. I will get that. Make sure I've got attendance for everyone. Min Chin. Actually, let me see. Hold on for a second. Yes, fill out the attendance for this week. You're going to need to fill out the attendance for the first couple of weeks because I have to do a census. I've been doing that, John, I think pretty much. Sorry, I missed that. And I will get these links updated.